Hello, I'm Kaiser and welcome to Moose Reads. Before I get started, I want to say that the opinions that I give here are my own opinions. They are extremely subjective. If I dislike a book, it is not a reflection on the author, and it is not a reflection on people who do like it. Different people have different tastes, and that's okay. Also, a bit of channel business. I've decided to change the way I post videos. Up till now, I've been, theoretically, writing, recording, and uploading the individual reviews as I finish each book. In practice, though, I've been procrastinating, stacking up 4 finished books without doing the videos, and then having to post them back to back in hopes of catching up, and then doing it again. So, in order to give myself more time to post reviews and space them out reasonably, I've decided that I will attempt to have these wrap-ups posted on the 2nd of each month, and then I will spend the following month posting the individual reviews for the books I discuss briefly here. That gives me a month to prepare any given video, and if I can't do that, this whole endeavor is a hopeless cause. I decided to do this quite a ways into April, so I did post the individual reviews for the first 4 books I read already, but the rest of them should be coming about every 3 days. So, for example, the review for Cibola Burn should be released on Monday the 6th. With that out of the way, let's get to the wrap-up. In April, I read 12 books. They totaled 4,749 pages, with an average of 396 pages per book and 158 pages per day. As always, there should be chapters marked so you can easily skip around. The first book I read in April was The Light Fantastic by Terry Pratchett. This is the second book published in the Discworld series. It is a fantasy novel, the description says. It's just one of those days when nothing seems to go right, and a most inopportune time for the first tourist ever to set foot in Discworld, accompanied by the carnivorous luggage, to extend his already eventful vacation, even if it's not quite by choice. A monstrous red star is on a direct collision course with the Discworld, and the future appears uncertain at best. Discworld needs a hero to save it from total destruction. Unfortunately, it's got the bumbling Rincewind, still recovering from the trauma of falling off the edge of the world. The alternative couldn't be much worse. 3 stars. I started Discworld because everybody says it's great. So far, I found it fairly middling. However, I'm determined to keep going. I'd heard that The Color of Magic, despite being the first published, was not a great place to start, and then I did it anyway. In April of 2022, incidentally. Since I'm trying to complete the series I finally picked up this second book in the series. I'm not overly fond of Rincewind, which is why I didn't enjoy these first 2 books as much as I would hope. It's not that I hate him or anything, he's just not my favorite protagonist to ever grace the pages. I do like Pratchett's writing, however. It's charming and whimsical in a way that I really enjoy, so while I may not have loved the characters in this one, I did somewhat enjoy the experience. Also, I'm pretty sure it's a decent plot, despite its protagonist. Second up was Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. This is the first book in the Anne of Green Gables series. It is a historical slice-of-life novel. The description says, 11-year-old orphan Anne Shirley has just arrived at Green Gables, and already her guardians want to send her back. First, she's not the boy the Cuthberts expected. Second, she talks too much. And even with her generous spirit, the redhead's a trouble magnet. She gets the neighbor drunk and nearly poisons the pastor. Still, despite a rocky start, the fiery Anne wins over her guardians and her new community. She enjoys life at Green Gables, excels in school, and earns a coveted scholarship. But when tragedy hits, Anne must choose between her dreams and the only home she's ever known. 3 stars. This book is pleasant to read. I did actually like it, but it's the sort of book where nothing really happens. It isn't dull, just hopelessly cozy. If you like that kind of book, you should try this. I, however, prefer more exciting plots, and will probably not be revisiting either this book or this series once I've finished. I followed that up with Anne of Avonlea by L.M. Montgomery. This is the second book in the Anne of Green Gables series. It is a historical slice-of-life novel, the description says. In L.M. Montgomery's second in the Anne of Green Gables series, Anne ventures into adulthood. Her gray eyes shine, and her red hair still reflects the fiery quality of her temper. Since arriving at Green Gables as a freckle-faced orphan, she has earned the affection of the residents of Avonlea and a reputation for getting herself into scrapes. However, when Anne begins her new job as a teacher, the true test of her character begins. Along with teaching the 3 R's, she discovers how challenging life can be when she meddles in another's romance, discovers 2 new orphans at Green Gables, and questions the very handsome Gilbert Blythe's odd behavior. As Anne matures into womanhood, her adventures appeal to both the heart and the senses. Also 3 stars. Again, it's charming and cozy. The characters are generally likable, particularly our protagonist, who always attempts to see the best of both the people and world around her. I liked it, I didn't love it. It's not the kind of book for me, but I will finish the series eventually. And then 4th up was Anne of the Island by L.M. Montgomery. This is the 3rd book in the Anne of Green Gables series. It is a historical slice-of-life novel, the description says. Anne Shirley has come a long way since her days as a mischievous orphan living in the house at Green Gables. She is now 18 and headed to faraway Redmond College in Kingsport. Anne's college years are sure to be full of fun, but they will also be a time for soul-searching and big decisions. When her longtime friend Gilbert Blythe proposes, Anne feels they can never be more than friends. But is her new admirer, the handsome and wealthy Roy Gardner, really the man of her dreams? 3 stars. This is much the same as the previous 2. This one focuses a little more on romance, though there's a fair amount in each of them. Also, this is the book where the character's Christianity started to hedge more into the realm of preachy, and thus it grated a little more on my nerves. It wasn't the most obnoxious moralizing I've ever read, and I expect it will recede again in future books, but we'll see. Not now, however, because I'm not reading Anne of Windy Poplars until August. At that point, my library had got in a hold I was waiting for, so my 5th book was Cibola Burn by James S. A. Corey. This is the 4th book in the Expanse series. It is a sci-fi novel, the description says. The gates have opened the way to 1,000 new worlds, and the rush to colonize has begun. Settlers looking for a new life stream out from humanity's home planets. Illis, the first human colony on this vast new frontier, is being born in blood and fire. Independent settlers stand against the overwhelming power of a corporate colony ship, with only their determination, courage, and the skills learned in the long wars of home. Innocent scientists are slaughtered as they try to survey a new and alien world. The struggle on Illis threatens to spread all the way back to Earth. James Holden and the crew of his one small ship are sent to make peace in the midst of war and sense in the midst of chaos. But the more he looks at it, the more Holden thinks the mission was meant to fail. And the whispers of a dead man remind him that the great galactic civilization that once stood on this land is gone, and that something killed it. 4 stars. This book was great. It's entirely in line with the series up till now, and I couldn't wait for more. Sadly, I had to, but that's neither here nor there. I liked the characters and I liked the plot, and unlike the last book, I wasn't annoyed by any of the various POVs. This book is very much a Murphy's Law kind of book. Whatever can go wrong, does. And there's a lot that can go wrong in a contested colony on an alien planet of which the characters know next to nothing. I'm not sure what else to say. Read The Expanse, it's good, and your library probably has it. My 6th book was Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. This is the 2nd book in the Farseer trilogy. It is a fantasy novel, the description says. Fitz has barely survived his first hazardous mission as King's assassin. Battered and bitter, he vows to abandon his oath to King Shrewd, remaining in the distant mountains. But love and events of terrible urgency draw him back to the court at Buck Keep, and into the deadly intrigues of the royal family. Renewing their vicious attacks on the coast, the Red Ship raiders leave burned-out villages and demented victims in their wake. The kingdom is also under assault from within, as treachery threatens the throne of the ailing king. In this time of great danger, the fate of the kingdom may rest in Fitz's hands, and his role in its salvation may require the ultimate sacrifice. 4 stars. I liked this book. It had a good plot and great characters. Not necessarily likable, but great. It is also long as hell, and it isn't even the worst offender in the realm of the elderlings. My brother and I are listening to the audiobook for Literary Diversion's Fitz-Along, and this one was 29 hours and some change. This book did also frustrate me like crazy. Everyone acted completely in character, but some of them make very obviously terrible choices and then don't understand why everything gets messed up. Our protagonist, Fitz, is primary among these fools, and I often just wanted to shake him violently and call him an idiot. Instead, I just took a day or 2 off from listening to it. After that, I restarted a series for which I read the first book and never continued, and which I needed to read for reasons that I will discuss later. So, 7th up was My One and Only Duke by Grace Burrows. This is the first book in the Rogues to Riches series. It is a Regency romance. The description says, "One minute, London banker Quinn Wentworth is facing execution. The next, he's declared the long-lost heir to a dukedom. Quinn has fought his way up from the worst slums, and now he's ready to use every dirty trick he knows to find the enemy who's schemed against him. Jane Winston, widowed and pregnant, crosses paths with Quinn while her father is preaching to the prisoners. Believing his days are numbered, Quinn offers her marriage as a way to guarantee her independence and provide for her child. Neither thinks they'll actually have a future together. He's a wealthy gutter rat out for revenge. She's a minister's daughter who must turn a marriage of desperation into a proper ducal union. Are they doomed from the start or destined for a happily ever after?" I'm not rating this book. I can't. I love Grace Burrows' Regency romances as a general rule. This, mostly, is no exception. It was a pleasant experience, the characters were lovely, and the plot was interesting. But the romance. It's fine. It's fine, really. There's just... So, for various reasons, Quinn is kind of being an idiot for the run of this book in one very specific way that involves lying to his wife. And that's not terribly uncommon in Grace Burrows' books. One or more of the characters usually has something they absolutely cannot tell their prospective love interest. But usually those reasons are more understandable than Quinn's, and usually they're fairly harmless when all is said and done. I didn't feel that way about Quinn's. Even so, I might have been fine with it if he hadn't done something very, very bad, more or less at the climax of the book. It is absolutely a betrayal, and it made me hate it. In fact, it apparently made me hate it so much the first time I read it that I rated this 2 stars. He does eventually admit he was wrong, and Jane forgives him, but it left a sour taste in my mouth. Honestly, I probably would never recommend this book to anyone, except this is the first book in a series, and contrary to what I had thought before, you really need to read each of them in order or you'll probably get at least mildly confused at some point. And the rest of this series is so good. So good that I was just tearing through it. So the rest of my books are very predictable. 8th was When a Duchess Says I Do by Grace Burrows. This is the second book in the Rogues to Riches series. It is a Regency romance. The description says, "Duncan Wentworth once tried his hand at rescuing a damsel in distress long ago, and he's vowed he'll never make that mistake again. Yet when he comes across a stranger in the poacher-infested woods of his estate, decency compels him to offer the lady aid. Matilda is whip-smart. She can read Duncan's horrible penmanship, and when she wears his reading glasses all Duncan can think about is naughty Latin poetry. Widowed Duchess Matilda Wakefield can't entrust her secrets to Duncan without embroiling him in the problems that sent her fleeing from London. But neither can she ignore a man who's honorable, a brilliant chess player, and maddeningly kissable. She needs to stay one step ahead of the enemies pursuing her, and falling into Duncan's arms is a distraction she can't afford, or they'll both pay the price. 4 stars. I don't really have a lot to say about this one. Duncan felt somewhat detached in the first book because he is Quinn's cousin rather than one of his siblings, so it was nice getting to know him better. I ended up really liking him. I liked Matilda just fine as well. They were good together. The plot around the romance was a little frustrating, mostly because it took too long to explain what was going on, so we'd occasionally pop in on Matilda's father and her former fiancé and get scenes that lose impact for not having enough context. Once it was properly explained, it then took way too long for the supposed geniuses to figure out the details that seemed fairly obvious to me. All the same, I liked it. I liked it better than the first book, certainly, because neither of the lovers actively betrayed the other. Then, of course, my 9th book was Forever and a Duke by Grace Burrows. This is the 3rd book in the Rogues to Riches series. It is a Regency romance. The description says, Wrexham, Duke of Ellesmere, is overrun by family obligations. With 3 sisters to escort about town, a legion of cousins to look after, and aunties who insist he dance with every eligible woman, he barely has time to manage his dukedom. When he finally carves out a moment to evaluate his family's finances, he learns that he, and his sisters, are on the verge of social catastrophe. Eleanora Hatfield has an uncanny knack for numbers, but she knows from experience that dealing with the peerage can only lead to problems. Though she wants nothing to do with any titled gentleman, she reluctantly agrees to help when Rex seeks aid from her employer. What starts out as an unwanted assignment soon leads to forbidden kisses and impossible longings. But with scandal haunting Ellie's past and looming in Rex's future, how can true love lead to anything but heartbreak? 4 stars. This book threw me for a loop. Not because the plot was exceptionally surprising. It was fine. But because of the characters involved. The first book featured Quinn, who has 3 unmarried siblings, a previously unmarried cousin, and an unmarried business partner, so I sort of assumed that this series would follow them. Whether or not the business partner would be thrown in was uncertain, but a possibility. But this book is, instead, about another duke that he's friends with, and we've seen or name-dropped a handful of times, falling in love with Quinn's bank auditor, who they've mentioned but has not previously been seen. It was an odd diversion. It wasn't bad by any means, it just surprised me. It was good. I liked it. I got surprisingly invested in the well-being of one of the side characters, who then didn't get a satisfying ending, because he wasn't really the point. So that was disappointing to me personally, but not necessarily a flaw in the book. As one might expect, my 10th book was A Duke by Any Other Name by Grace Burrows. This is the 4th book in the Rogues to Riches series. It is a Regency romance, the description says. Nathaniel, Duke of Rothaven, lives in seclusion, leaving his property only to gallop his demon-black steed across the moors by moonlight. Exasperated mammas invoke his name to frighten small children, though Nathaniel is truly a decent man. Maybe too decent for his own good. That's precisely why he must turn away the beguiling woman demanding his help. Lady Althea Wentworth has little patience for dukes, reclusive or otherwise, but she needs Rothaven's backing to gain entrance into polite society. She's asked him nicely, she's called on him politely, all to no avail, until her prize hogs just happen to plunder the ducal orchard. He longs for privacy, she's vowed to never endure another ball as a wallflower. Yet as the two grow closer, it soon becomes clear they might both be pretending to be something they're not. 4 stars. I am half tempted to bump both this and the next book up to 5 stars, but I'll stick with 4 for now. I really liked this one, though I do feel the description is a little misleading. We're back with the Wentworth family for this one, and Althea is lovely. Nathaniel, however, is a saint. There's really not a lot more I can say about this without wandering into spoilers, though, so I'll just say that this is one of my favorites in a series that I generally quite enjoy. Next, I read The Truth About Dukes by Grace Burrows. This is the 5th book in the Rogues to Riches series. It is a Regency romance. The description says, Robert Rothmere is hiding a past no duke should have endured, but he's not hiding it well enough. Sooner or later, his enemies will learn that he spent years locked away at a private asylum. To get their hands on his wealth, they'll try to send him right back to his worst nightmares. If Robert is to foil their schemes, he needs to marry a perfectly proper, blessedly boring, deadly dull Duchess. Immediately. And he knows exactly which quietly delightful lady he'd love to entrust with that role. Lady Constance Wentworth has cultivated a reputation for utter forgettability. She never speaks out of turn, in public, never has a daring thought that she admits aloud, and never comes close to courting scandal, as far as anybody knows. Her path crossed Robert's years ago, though, and she's never forgotten the extraordinary lengths he traveled to keep her safe when she hadn't a friend in the world. She longs to be his demure Duchess, but little does he know that to marry her would be utter madness. 4 stars. So this book is the reason I started in on this series. I was at a thrift bookstore and happened to see this one on the shelf. Given how much I generally love Grace Burrows, I couldn't pass it up. And at the time, I thought that this was a series of standalones centered on a specific theme. Obviously, I didn't remember the one book I'd read well enough, or I'd have known better. So when I started reading this one in March, I quickly realized I'd made a mistake and would need to start at the beginning. Worth it. I love Constance, and I love Robert, and I want nothing but the best for them. The description doesn't say, but Robert suffers from seizures, and his asshole father had him locked up in what is referred to as an asylum, but you eventually learn was not legally classified as such. Incidentally, heavy trigger warnings for this, and probably the previous book as well, for people being forcibly committed and for medical abuse. I'm pretty sure the laws regarding asylums at the time were absolute garbage, but what Robert endured was worse. But if you can handle those elements in a story, this book is fantastic. If I'd hated every other book in this series, I probably would have been glad I read them just to get here. Thankfully, that wasn't the case. My 12th book was How to Catch a Duke by Grace Burrows. This is the 6th book in the Rogues to Riches series. It is a Regency romance. The description says, Miss Abigail Abbott desperately needs to disappear, permanently, and the only person she trusts to help her do that is Lord Stephen Wentworth, heir to the Duke of Walden. Stephen is brilliant, charming, and, when he needs to be, absolutely ruthless. So ruthless that he proposes marriage instead of murder to keep Abigail safe. Stephen was smitten the instant his sister introduced him to Abigail, a woman with the dignity and determination of a duchess and the courage of a lioness. When she accepts his courtship of convenience, he also discovers she kisses like his most intimate wish come true. For Abigail, their arrangement is a sham to escape her dangerous enemies. For Stephen, it's his one chance to share a lifetime with the lady of his dreams. If only he can convince her his love is real. 4 stars. I have been waiting for Stephen's book pretty much from the beginning, and it generally did not disappoint. We get a deep look into how he thinks and behaves, and got to see how little most of his family really understands him. Abigail was lovely, and I liked the relationship between them. The plot was a little weak, however. The reason Abigail wants to fake her death is that she has somehow gotten on the wrong side of a Marquess. He has twice attempted to do her harm in order to retrieve some letters that are in her possession. That's all well and fine, but at every turn I found it exceedingly predictable. And while I generally don't mind predictable plots, when we're dealing with a character whose intellect is praised to the heavens at every turn, it starts to feel silly when the answers are obvious to me, but elude him. Despite that, I still enjoyed it quite a bit. That's all the books I read in April. For those of you curious, here are my plans for May. Obviously, I will be finishing the Rogues to Riches series. I have already started Never a Duke, and will likely have finished it by the time this video actually goes up. I will also be reading the next book of The Expanse, Nemesis Games by James S. A. Corey, because it came in from the library. For the 2024 challenge, I've committed myself to reading all 4 books of The Scum Villains Self-Saving System by Mo Shang Tongshu, for a book by a favorite author, as well as The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan as a book from an author I've never read. If it comes in from the library, I will be reading Let the Dead In by Saida Agostini for my local book club. I need to read Thousand Autumns Volume 4 by Meng Shi because I bought it in April and didn't find the time for it yet. And if I get through all of that with room to spare, entirely likely at this point, I'm considering a reread of Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. Beyond that, I have no plans whatsoever, but given that most of those are physical books, I'm sure I'll slide something else in on the digital front, so I'll have something to read during meals, as is my way. If you like this video, I hope you'll watch more in the future. Thanks for watching this one. Bye!